theyeshiva.net.
Okay, Siv Beis. So we've been exploring the process of creation, which is Yesh Me'ayin, and the process of Avodah, which is Me'ayin. The creation is Yesh from Ayin, and Avodah is Ayin from Yesh. 154 Perek Beis. Second column, Siv Beis. The process of creation is Me'ayin Liyesh. The process of Avodah is Miyesh Ayin, especially during the Indian of the concept of Karbonis, bringing the animal back to its source, and that's the same concept of Tefillah. Perek Beis. Ach lohavin lama ba karban atamid min hakevesh. To understand the main carbon that was done every day, which is connected to Tefillah, is the Tefillahs are connected to Tmidim, was brought after from the sheep. We said that all animals, their chiyus comes from Pnei Shor, and all chayas, their chiyus comes from Pnei Aryeh. And the carbon brings back the soul of the behemoth back to Pnei Shor, to the Merkava. And for that there was music during the carbon, and from there it goes deeper to the Aryeh. Just like the Kohen brings up the carbon down here, the Aryeh, which is Chesed, brings up the carbon up there. Yeminoi techapkeni, it goes back to Orein Sof Baruch Hu Mamash, and that's the concept of Tefillah. But the Tefillah is connected to a specific carbon, and that carbon was the carbon Tamid, like we say, Sakeves Echet Tasav Aboiker, Vesakeves Hasheni Tasav Ben Harbayim. And here's the question: why the sheep dafka? Why the keves dafka? Ha'inyan hu she'im ha'yoyis sha'achiyus shel nefesh ha'behemis yored v'nimshach. Despite the fact that the life of the souls of the behemoths comes ultimately from the spiritual source known as the face of the ox and the Merkava, and through a carbon it goes back to that space, every animal down here is really a spiritual a physical manifestation of divine energy. And the carbon really doesn't mean destruction of the animal, it means sublimation of the animal. Mikolma koim bochar Hashem b'kvasam dafka. Hashem chose sheep. I find this to be a very fascinating, beautiful expression. Bochar Hashem b'kvasam dafka. The Rebbeinu Shel Olam, Hashem chose sheep. Last time it says in the Torah, Sakeves Echad. It means it's a mitzvah. A mitzvah means Hashem chose sheep dafka. Shekeves yesh lo kol rachamim midaser shel Yaakov. It happens to be that the sound, the voice of a keves is unique. It's known as a kol rachaman. It's a voice that triggers compassion. It triggers rachaman. You ever hear a sheep, the meh of a sheep, even a heart of stone, right? There's something very delicate, sensitive, docile, submissive. There's a lot of rachamim in the kol of the keves, which is midaser shel Yaakov, who is considered v'akvasim hifrid Yaakov. We learned once in the Maim of Sfir Sa'omer the connection of kvasim to Yaakov. V'gam hakeves yesh lo tzemer ba'oiroi shememenu roiv hamalbushim. It's also the keves, the sheep, has wool in its skin. Its skin is full of tzemer, wool, which roiv hamalbushim. Most of the garments come from wool. Kamei shekasav, as the pasuk says in Iyov, in Perek Lamed Aleph. The pasuk says, "Umigeiz kvasim yischamam." From the giza, from the shearing, from the wool of sheep, one becomes warm. Iyov Perek Lamed Aleph pasuk Chaf. So he brings a pasuk that our warmth, meaning our garments, come from the giza. Giza is when you cut, when you hagoizes, you shear the wool. Is called giza. Umigeiz kvasim yischam. What's the connection? So here comes a long explanation. The skin of the kevesh is that which covers the body of the sheep. Especially it becomes cold. So the sheep, like many animals, they need a coat. They have a natural coat. You look sometimes outside in the bitter, muncy New York winters, and you look at the deer and the other animals, and you have rachmanis on them, that they're not sitting in a house with a fireplace burning, warming their bones up like we. They have the oir, they have the fur or whatever it is, their coats, in which they can survive. So Lamaila Hine Ha'or Hu Inyan Harakia. The Or, as he's going to explain soon, represents what we call the Rakia, the firmament, the heaven. And just like on our skin, we have Cyrus, and the same is true in animal skin. On the animal skin, there could be Cyrus, or in the case of the sheep, it's Tzemer. It's not just here, but it's actually wool, which we make levushim out of. So the same is true spiritually. The Rakia is the source of what's called Tzirufei Oisis, combinations of letters, which represent here. Every letter a here. Shalza Amru Razal. On this, the Chazal tell us in Masechta Chagiga, Shahamalach Sandlefoin, Koishik Sarim Lekoinoi Mitzirufei Oisis Atfila. There's an angel called Sandalphon, and from the Oisis of davening of the Jewish people, he takes the Oisis and he weaves crowns to his creator from the Oisis of the Jewish people that they utter during Tefillah. He takes those letters and he ties crowns from it. And the Balatanya says, "V'hadvarim atikim ve'en laharich." These are ancient ideas, ve'en laharich. No need to elaborate on it. In other words, obviously there's a lot of depth in these metaphors and expressions, and some he's going to get back to. But he says he's not going to get into now everything. These are ancient ideas, advarim atikim ve'en laharich. What he wants to get to is achabosar v'hachele v'adam v'gidim v'atzamas shalatamid haya oila kula kol al gabe hamizbeach aval ha'oidim atzemer nitn l'koyel ha'makriv k'mashikasav oira oila shehikriv l'koyen lo yiyah. In every animal you have different parts. You have the flesh, the meat. You have the fat. You have the blood. You have the arteries, the sinews. You have the bones. All of this went onto the Mizbeach. In the case of the carbon tamid, it was called a carbon oil because it all went up on the altar. But not the fur. All the skin and the wool, that was given to the kohen. That was the halacha by every carbon oil. That what oila shehikriv, what kohen lo yiyah, pasuk in Vayikra Perik Zayin, the oiris ha'oila go to the kohen. Everything else goes onto the Mizbeach. I mean, they took out some of the unclean parts, but generally the bones and all the meat. You had karbanas shlomim that the meat didn't go on the mizbeach, only the chelav, only certain fats. The rest were eaten by the koyanim or by the people, most of it by the people who owned it. But the oila, everything in terms of the skeleton, the bones, the meat, the fat, and the blood went right onto the mizbeach. Of course, some of the blood was sprinkled on the mizbeach, and the rest, the fur, went to the kohen as a gift, the outer skin. Now, if everything in a carbon exists in tefillah, so now the question is, what is that in davening? There's a part of davening which is the blood, the fat, the meat, and the bones, and the sinews that goes on the mizbeach. There's a part of davening which is the fur, the skin, the wool that goes to the kohen. What does this represent? Tefillah is connected to midden tikkun. He says, "Lefi she'einu yochel likol im chiyus hanefesh habamis k'mei habosar ha'chelev dam atzamas v'gidin v'lechein eini nisref imam el lekula nitin l'koyin ha'makriv k'mei shu b'shleimus im atzem." The reason is because the skin, al pi pshat, you wanted to give the koyin something. On a deeper level, the skin can't go and be submerged with the chiyus, the original life of the animal, the nefesh habahamis. The carbon takes the soul of the animal and brings it back to its source. The skin can't become part of that. The meat, yes. The fat, yes. The blood, yes. The sinews, yes. The bones, yes. So it can't be burnt. You take it and you give the whole skin with the wool as is. They would skin the sheep and give it all to the kohen with its semen. So now we have to understand, what does this mean? What's basar? What's gidden? What's atzamas? All a mile above. Al derech mashal. Here we have the famous yisoid. Nothing in the physical world that's not a reflection of a spiritual reality. So when you see meat here, or fat here, or blood here, or bones here, or fur here, or wool here, it all represents an energy. In fact, the spiritual counterpart is much more is equally significant to this physical. The physical is a manifestation of the spiritual. It doesn't begin with the physical, it begins with the spiritual, because everything, as we learn to say, there is Ishtalshalos. Everything exists first in ayin, and then it comes in yesh, and then the ayin continues lower and lower and lower until it becomes physical. So when you see wool down here, you have to know what is wool up there. You see fat here, what is fat there? What is flesh up there? What are bones? What are skeletons up there? In other words, it's looking at the universe and seeing the physical as a prism through which you can see the spiritual. We'll understand this from basically learning what it's discussed in Sifrei books of Chachmas HaNituach. You know what Chachmas HaNituach is? The anatomy, the Chachma of Nituach. Nituach literally means to cut, but it's the word dissect. So it's the Svarim that deal with surgery, with the wisdom of surgeries of Nituach, which is basically appreciating the anatomy of the physiological structure of the animal or of the human being, or any organism that you're dealing with. So in the Svarim of Chachmas HaNituach, we find the following concept. Shehishavus ha'atzamais nimshach me'amoyach, v'hishavus ha'basar hu me'adam, shemishkanei belev shemimenu nasa basar. Bones, the creation of bones, is uniquely connected to the brain. The creation, the ishavus habasar of the flesh, is uniquely connected to the blood, which the primarily residence of the blood, the part that pumps the blood and generates the blood, is the heart. Shemimenu nasa basar, from which the blood creates the flesh, the basar, where the bones are created directly from the mayach. Ukamaymer Azal, the Gemara says in Nida, loiven shemimenu atzamos. Loiven, which is the white, the sperm, the seed of life, is called the loiven, which is associated with the mayach, from where the atzamos come. V'hine halev humokem mishkan hamidus ava v'yira. The heart is the place where the midos dwell, the emotions dwell. Ava, love, yira. When you feel love, the heart is on fire. You'll say, the heart's brent. Everything is connected to the brain. There's no emotion that's not from the brain. But the place where midos dwell, where they're experienced, is in the heart. The heart beats faster. Passion is a hard experience. Shehein in b'chinas retichas hadamim shebelev agashmi. It's literally, retichas hadamim means zudike blut. The blood becomes hot. You'll say a hot-blooded person. Retichas hadamim means that in the heart, the blood becomes hot. Whether it's avira, taiva gashmis, nitzuach. The love could be positive. The love could not necessarily be positive. Sometimes a person is in love, or is addicted, or has inclinations to things that may be destructive, that may be broken. But this is where their passion is. Or they have different types of taivas. Unitzuach, they have to win. It's also a taiva. I have to win every fight, every argument. The kachla ma'il on a spiritual level, machane mechol ba'ava aza, machane Gavriel is yira. The camp of Michal represents intense love. The camp of Gavriel, intense awe. These all represent the flesh that come from the blood in the heart. Machane Michal, machane Gavriel. Achadas va'asaga shemasigim b'gdula sein soif baruch hu kol chad lefim shura d'leil lefim madrigasai hu b'chines ha'atzamayis shabayim min hamayach. In Yiddishkeit, there's two components. There's the heart and there's the mind. The heart, the emotions, the retichas adamim, the blood, that's connected to the heart, and it's connected to the basar, the meat, the flesh. Then there's the atzamayis, the bones are connected to the mayach, that is the das, the comprehension, the awareness, that everyone, according to their own shir, can comprehend something about godliness. Nobody, no two people the same. Everybody lefum shir delay, according to his own shir, lefi madrigas. V'hinei hagam sham midasein lefi das v'asaga ki lefi sichla yehula lishkatan lefi katne v'gada lefi gadloi. Although midas are always commensurate with your das, as the pasuk says, lefi sichla yehula lish, according to one's seichel, a man will be praised, which he means that every person's midas are based on his seichel. Your emotions are always based on your awareness. Mikol makom, loy kol hadas v'hasaga melubeshes b'midas. Not the entire das could be manifested in emotions. Because comprehension is in the truth, the greatness of Ein Sof. And if it's Ein Loy Sof, how do you expect the emotions to contain infinity? By definitions, emotions can't contain infinity because they're infinite. So therefore you can't expect that everything you understand should be manifested in emotion. It can't be. A human being is finite, and emotion is about human excitement. And you can't expect me to get excited by something that is completely transcendent, because it's not me. For me to get excited, I have to feel that it speaks to me. For me to feel that it speaks to me, it has to be finite. Infinity can't speak to me because I'm finite. For something to excite me, it has to be relevant to my life. If it's relevant to my life, it's finite. If it's infinite, it's like, thank you very much, but no thank you. I can't do anything with it emotionally. I can understand it, at least on some level, because understanding is not about me. Understanding could be abstract too. So he says, your malchus extends over all the worlds. It goes above without end and below without end. In other words, the higher you go, you still didn't get there. You can go higher and higher. The lower you go, you also didn't get there. You can go lower and lower. Im esak shamayim shamata vatzia shaylinek ein lo tchila vein lo tichli, has no beginning and no end. V'cheinu memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor sheb'chol olam v'b'chol dor v'dor shein b'chinas olam nefesh v'gam b'chinas shana nimsheches aris ein sof baruch hu k'mo shekasav leis hasar ponim minei mamish. He has the word mamish. Malchus kol olamim is in terms of place. Memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor, it is time. In Sefer Yetzirah, we know reality is made up of three components: olam, shana, nefesh. Space, time, and spirit. Every experience in life is a convergence of three elements. There's where you are, the space. There's the time you're in, and there is the presence in that space and that time. Right now, Monday morning, 7:37 a.m. is the time. But other people at the same time are somewhere else. You happen to be here. So that's the space and the time. And then there's who's here. So everything is olam, shana, nefesh. And that's how we live our lives. So in olam, it's malchus kol olamim. You could find God in every space. Memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor, in every time. And the same is true in every person. Leis hasar, which means no space is devoid of him, mamish. V'im kain im hoysa kol ha'askala melubeshes b'midas shebelev lahoya b'chilas ha'midas ava v'yira lahachil lahag b'lasaga kla. If the whole askala would be involved in midas, the midas could never contain it. Elohoyim is batlim imitziyusam. They would be obliterated. K'mayim Azal, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, hoyishut etzboy aktana b'neim v'sarfa. Hashem stretched out his pinky among the malachim, and they got burnt. What is that? A pinky. Pinky is only one of 10 fingers, which basically represents Malchus, the 10th finger, the tiniest finger, and even that was too intense. Ela hasaga hamislabeshes b'midos hibchines ha'ore mitzumtzemes ma'at mize'er me'hasaga shebemoyach and amsheches lislabesh b'leiv mokem ha'midos. What comes into midas is a restricted ray, very little bit, from the comprehension of the mind that can come into the heart in the place of the midas. V'heim b'chines gidin v'orkim. How do you translate Urkim? The arteries, the sinews and the arteries, which connect the bones with the flesh. It's the arteries, ligaments, that represent physically the spiritual transition from brain to heart, or in the lashon of this maimer, from the bones to the flesh. And it has to go through those arteries because it has to be limited in order for the midas to contain them. The anatomy of the body, in other words, is a reflection of the spiritual anatomy of the soul. The physiological structure of a person is a mirror of the spiritual structure of the human being here and also in higher worlds. What's the nekuda being conveyed here? And we come here to another fascinating idea, and one that also was evoked some debate during its time. The Baal HaTanya here is analyzing two different streams in Yiddishkeit. The stream of Hasaga, comprehension, intellect, understanding, das, awareness, connected to the mind. And the stream of passion, ave, yira, ritichas adamim, heisa blut, feeling.
It's the difference of knowing and going through your body.
Yes, yes. There's knowledge, and then there's going through your body. Experiential Judaism. Experiential Judaism. Now, as you know, we have very little experience with experiential Judaism. We Jews love the mind. We love the mind. Experiential Judaism, by definition, is the person feels it. They're excited about it. What's the role of das? What's the role of midas? In the time of the Baal HaTanya, this became a big debate among the Hasidic masters. I touched on it a few times, but here we see a different angle in it. When you read the works of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, you'll see they always appeal to the heart. Generally, when people will speak about the world of Hasidus, they'll always say they wanted to give Jews emotions. The Litvische was learning. And the Polish Yidden said, the hearts. Rachmana liba boy, the Yiddish hearts, emotions. So abyssal passions. Give me some feelings. Stop with the chkiris, with the pulpulim. Yeah? The heart. The Baal HaTanya, in that sense, is a very enigmatic figure, because he was a quintessential Litvak in many ways. Even his chassidus, it's full of haskalah, full of lamdas, and never his niglas, chassidus, all of it. This was a debate that was going on very heavily. I told you once about Avram Kalisker, his colleague, wrote to him a very sharp letter about the Tanya. I read the Tanya, I don't like it, it's too intellectual. It's a Sefer HaSeichel. And he brings a pasuk in Emer, Bas koyin ki seichel liznois be'esh tisarif, a fire dike wort, he says. It says in Zohar, koyin is chachma. Bas koyin, you know what the result of too much intellect is? Ki seichel liznois, you become a zoina. You use your mind too much and you become a zoina. You know what the eitz is? Ba'esh tisarif. Just get burnt up in fire. He says, what are you with your intellect? The main thing is fire, passion. Wake up in the soul of Jews. The soul is passionate to God, and you'll have emotion. Emotion. And therefore, in other Hasidic circles, the main focus was his slavos, his structures. The davening with emotion, the sitting together with emotion, singing nigunim with emotion, farbringing together with emotion, when they would gather together, learning with emotion, mitzvahs with emotion. His slavos passion. And the truth is, he had a very strong point. What's knowledge going to do for you? The main thing is experience. Life should be experienced. Life should be emotional. The mind could be detached. People could learn about things. It has nothing to do with them. It doesn't create a dent in them, right? They learn, and an hour later, it's all over. It's all finished. I told you once, there was a professor in Cambridge, Bertrand Russell, a real atheist and not a very ethical person in terms of his marriage and other things. And it was very open. So they once asked him, he taught ethics. How do you teach ethics when everybody knows you're unethical? He says, I teach trigonometry, I teach mathematics, I teach algebra, and I'm not a circle, I'm not a triangle. You could teach ethics and not be ethical. Why? I learn. So it's like a computer. Yeah, did you ever see somebody, I never saw anybody, they come into my office, have an Oitzah HaChachma, You see an Oitzah HaChachma, you should jump up. The biggest cover that Torah is for Oitzah HaChachma. You know how much Torah is there? Nobody knows as much as Oitzah HaChachma, the disk. The answer is a disk. Google knows much more than everybody. L'chei nikra shmoi Google, because it's the greatest gadol. Google Adar, Kiyadua. They say the Gemara says Talmud Chacham Ikri Shabbos. Why? Because on Shabbos you can't use Google, so you see if he's a Talmud Chacham or not. Middle of the week, you check up on your phone, you know everything. Right? You can know the whole Shas. But nobody stands up in front of an iPhone, even though there's Bavli, mit Yerushalmi, mit Rishayim, mit Achirayim. The answer is, why? It's because it's for an iPhone. So you have people, it's a Gemara says, Tzana Mole Safra. Tzana Mole Safra means a bookcase full of Svarim. So some people, they're a bookcase full of Svarim, but it's not them. It's not experienced. Gemara brachas here. You heard of the Baal HaFlaw, yeah? Ever heard of the Baal HaFlaw? One of the students of the Maggid of Mezrich was a Jew named the Baal HaFlaw. He wrote a sefer from Masechta Kedushin called Sefer HaMakna. In yeshivas, it's a very prominent sefer till today, all yeshivas. He wrote on Ksuvas called HaFlaw. His name was HaFlaw, Harav Pinchas Levi Ish Horovitz. He was one of the Goyni Adar. He was the rabbi of Frankfurt in Germany. Chief rabbi of Frankfurt, a brother of Reb Shmelke of Niklasburg. He wrote a sefer called Ponim Yafis on Chumash. His Sfarim Agoinis, he was a huge gon. He became a student of the Maggid. How? He was not from that world at all. Well, nobody was from that world. It was all new. He was a gon oilam, and he was traveling. He had a din Torah not far from Mezrich, which is in the Ukraine. And he was traveling, and he was going nearby Mezrich. So he said, you know what? He heard about the Maggid. Let him check him out. You go, you check somebody out. So the Baal HaFlaw goes into the Maggid to check him out. Of course, he comes in for a few minutes, and he's not impressed. He's not impressed. Fine, next, you move on. On the way out, the Maggid tells him, do me a favor, before you leave, go into the Beis Medrash. There's a Yid there who sits by the oven. There was an oven to warm up the winter. In Talis and Tefillin, he probably finished Shachritz already, it was the morning. Read mit him and learn in Abyssal. If you could speak to him and learn it. So he goes, fine, he asked. He goes to the Beis Medrash, he goes to the oven, there's a Yid in Talis and Tefillin, he goes over to him. Shalom Aleichem, wie heißt er? Der Pinchas Horovitz, wie heißt er? Heißt Zusha. It was the Zusha of Anapoli. He's sitting in Talis and Tefillin, he says, your Rebbe asked me I should speak to you in learning. He says, no, he must have meant somebody else. Ich bin a Pashat to Yid, you don't speak to me in learning. He says, no, he said you were sitting by the oven. He says, find out, I don't think it's me, you probably misheard him. You didn't hear what the Rebbe said. He said, it's you. He says, was lernt er? He says, I'm telling you, ich bin sehr a Pashat to Yid. He says, what are you learning? He says, I'm learning Masechta Brachas. He says, so let me that, which daf are you learning? So Bzusha says it happens to be. Anybody here knows brachas? It's the sugya of Oren v'Seifa mitztarfen. Atazai. Mem Zayin Amid Beis. I'm learning brachas Mem Zayin Amid Beis. He says, Nu vas lernst du? So he says, you see, I'm learning brachas. I learn Pashat and Mesechtas. I don't learn complicated Mesechtas. Reb Zusha tells him. So he says, was lernst du? So he says, I just learned the Gemara, Amir Reb Huna, Tisha va'aden mitztarfen. The Gemara says in Brachas, Reb Huna says, when you need a minyan, so you have 9 people, and you have the Aron Kodesh, is Archa minyan. Amalei Reb Nachman, va'aden gavru? The Aron is a mensch? What do you mean Tisha va'aden mitztarfen? Since when does an ark become a person? El Amir Reb Huna, you didn't understand. Tisha nidin kasada mitztarfen. Tisha that's nidin kasada mitztarfen. So he says, what's pshat? When you have the 9 people together, so it doesn't look like 9 because they're not spread apart. It could look like 10, so it could be mitztaref. Some people say it means when they're together, and some people say when they're separate. 2 pshatim and what Reb Huna meant. Okay. Reb Ami said Shnayim v'Shabbos mitztarfen. The Gemara continues. So the Baal HaFlaw tells Reb Zusha, he says, no. So what do you have to say about this Gemara? He says, the truth is I mamash don't understand the Gemara. He says, why? He says, Amir Reb Huna Tisha v'Aden mitztarfen. Amalei Reb Nachman v'Aden gavruhu. What did he think Reb Huna meant that an Aron is a person? He really thought that. He says, what, an Aron is a person? That's what you need people. You need people. I don't understand what he meant. So the Balafla says, no. He says, ich verstehe nicht, maybe you have an answer. He says, I don't. This just says, I'll tell you what I'm thinking. Reb Huna says, Tisha v'Arim etztarfen, you have 9 Jews, and you have an Aron. An Aron is also a Jew. He's a Jew who's filled with Torah, just like an Aron. He's filled with Torah. Mamash and Aron has the whole Sefer Torah. This Jew is also filled with Torah. Amalai, v'Aron gavruhu. You think das is pshat gavra? The fact that somebody is filled with Torah, you think that makes him a person? Das is garnished. Yes. Person can be filled with Torah, but it's nicht It's not him. He's filled. He has endless information. It's not him. Aron gavru. So he says it could be a Yid. He's baki b'chol Torah kula, but it's nicht kein gavra. There's nobody home. He has in him Torah. So he said, "Ich bleib." He stayed, and he stayed. Became one of the greatest Talmidei HaMaggid. He's the one who pushed the Alter Rebbe to write a Shulchan Aruch. And the Hagdam of Shulchan Aruch, it says he saw something he wrote on Hilchas Pesach, and he said, "You have to write a Shulchan Aruch." I mean, the Maggid pushed it, but he was very behind it. And he was such a god, so the Balatanya accepted from him. This was what took him. What's the Vart? The Vart is, you throw Seichel without Midas, there's no Aron. It's an Aron, it's an Ishtakin Gavra. Emotions. Emotions means relevance. When do people get excited about something? If it relates to them. You're reading in Gemara, Reuven stole money from Shimon. You don't get angry. Mom's a lowlife. Yeah? Or you have in Gemara, Reuven harag hanever. A Jew kills somebody else. You don't get uvgebroigest. Why? It's just a hypothesis. It's not a real story. It's a concept. Concept by definition are detached. What's the concept of shoichat? Why can't somebody who takes a bribe paskin a din? One reason. He's subjective, he's not objective. Objectivity means detached. So when you're paskining a halachin, choshen mishpat, detachment is a good thing. But if you're connected to the person because he gives you money, or he's a relative, or you have a bias, or you have an interest, it's over. The Gemara in Ksubis has a whole sugya about different favors that people did for Amirayim or Tanayim, including tiny little things, and he said, Psalinu ladina, you're puzzle for a din. I can't be a dayan with you. Reb Moshe Shapiro, Zechron Levracha, was the last year he gave here. The last year actually he ever gave, you remember? The Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah. So he said that when he was a bachi, he was walking with Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner, he was a Talmud of Rav Hutner. So his lapel and this kapota was a little angeknecht. So he made it straight. So he said, Paslinu leiladina, you just made me puzzle to be a dayan for you. That was his way of saying thank you. I guess that was the slabotka way of some people of saying thank you. You just made me puzzle to be your dayan because you did me a favor. Okay? What's the problem with shoichat? Once you do me a favor, I'm not objective. I'm subjective. I like you. If I like you, I'm already going to find a Rebbe Akiva that supports you. Why? That's how it works. Emotions affect people. What do kids say? Mommy, you're too emotional. Let's go to Tati. He's out for lunch. Yeah, Mommy is emotional. She cares. Tati, yeah, go. You want to go? Go for 4 weeks. It's fine. Go to the forest. Fine. Call me in a year. When you're emotional, it clouds judgment. So in Choshen Mishpat, it's a problem. In Avodas Hashem, emotions are the key. But here the Balatanya puts in a whole other angle to explain his whole shitta here. And that is, but emotions, their blessing is their problem. Their blessing is their limitation. For something to excite me, it has to be relevant to me. Why is it that if a person is giving a shiur, and the shiur is just concepts, and there's no illustration to life, people get bored? Why? Because it's less true? No, because it's not relevant to my life. You want me to get excited about something? Speak about my life. That's why there's some people who always love giving examples of shalom bayis. Why? Why? There's no other examples in the world. The answer is because the fact is people wake up then. They stop texting. Why do they stop texting? Because it's relevant. They're going to come home and they're going to get a Kabbalah's Panim, Kamosha Kosov. So it's relevant. Whenever something is relevant, people get excited about it because you're speaking to me. Speak to me. You speak about stress and anxiety, everybody listens. You speak about truth, be'etzem, everybody is out. Why? I'm not here to gain information. Very few people want information. They're scholars, they're objective scholars. People want to live. They want to be happy. They want to be satisfied. They want a little serenity. They want a little tranquility. What's that Yiddish song? Wie nennt man a bissel? Huh? Wie nennt man a bissel mazel? People are looking for a bissel mazel. He wants to make a buck. He wants to be happy. He wants better harmony in his house. A little monach. He wants a little menuchas hanefesh. You speak about that, I'm in. You don't speak about that, have a good day, Charlie. In other words, midas by definition is about me. It's never about truth. Midas means I get excited. For me to get excited, it has to speak to me. That means it has to be filtered in a way that it speaks to my life. But the Alter Rebbe says, when you're dealing with a lakus, you're dealing with Ein Sof. When you're dealing with infinity, by definition, you can't expect that the midos can contain infinity. Because if you get excited by infinity, then it means you're infinite. And if you're infinite, you cease to be. So that means the information that has to be channeled to people in order to get excited emotionally has to always come from infinity to finiteness. If the information remains infinite, it will not speak to you emotionally unless you cease to be. There were those people, Nadav and Avihu. They got excited, but they got too excited. They got excited by the real thing. B'karvasam lifnei Hashem bayamusu. They loved so much, they kissed Hashem, they died. We once learned the Gemara in Megillah, you remember, Kam Rabbi, Shachtel and Abzeda. By the Purim meal, Rabbi and Abzeda were drinking, and Rabbi killed, he slaughtered Abzeda. So what pshat? He shvich his dam in the middle of a Sudas Purim. You get drunk, you don't murder. Although I was by Sudas Purim 2 years ago, and somebody was drunk, and somebody else was arguing with him, and this man picked up a knife, and he said, Come Rabbi, come Rabbi, come Rabbi. And I go, oh my God. So we learned then the Gevaldik word from the Rebbe, from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Kam Rabbi Shach Abzeda was, he was Megala Pnimius HaTorah more than Abzeda's Kalim could contain. Shachta, he died, but it was a different type of death. It was like another Avihu's death. The Modritzer Rebbe once, the Divrei Yisrael. Anybody here knows Modritzer Nigunim? He needed a surgery in 1923 in Berlin. But they couldn't do anesthesia on him. He was too weak. So he composed a niggin, Eila Eskira, from Ne'ilah. They sing it in Modritz once a year on his yahrzeit, Yud Gimel Kislev. The niggin goes for around 25 minutes, just once. Just once. It's 72 stanzas. And he said, I'm going to do the niggin. When you see I'm in the middle of the niggin, you could do the surgery. I won't fail it. The Kachava. They did the surgery. He lived quite a while afterwards. Sometimes a person has a semi-experience, transcendental experience. But by definition, for it to excite me, it has to speak to me. For it to speak to me, God has to be filtered from infinity to finiteness. Practically speaking, the question has to be what God means to me, what Yiddishkeit means to me, how it helps my life, how it helps my identity. For that, there has to be a tremendous tzimtzum. That's the giddim and the arkim, the arteries that connect the brain to the heart, represent that transition from understanding to emotion. But in the world of understanding, there's no limits. In the world of understanding, you can tune into a truth that transcends you. It transcends you, it doesn't compromise the truth. That's the maila of seichel that midas doesn't have. Midas always is about relevance. That's its beauty. Its limitation is what could be relevant? Only that which speaks to my condition today. That's what it is. And that's its power. That's its power. People that know how to speak to people. You know how to get them going because you know them. The world of seichel is a world where you're searching for truth. Not for what truth does to you, but for truth. So now I ask you a question. If this Shir in Likkutei Torah would just be about truth, not what truth does for you, how many people would come? Rabbi Litzman, you're honest. I told you he's honest. I told you he's honest.
Moses say when you take the Nagina, is from Oz Yosh and Moshe. Rashi says Allah believe.
Allah believe shayash. Allah believe shayash. Allah believe shayash. Yeah. So therefore, so what's the sikkum? Thank you for the clarification. So what's the sikkum? The sikkum is this: that if midas don't have the haskala behind it, what happens is the person, inspiration remains. There's something very limiting about the inspiration, because it's only about what I'm capable of experiencing today. What seichel allows the person is that to really appreciate truth on its terms, not on my terms. To expand my horizon beyond my experience, but it's not emotionally compelling. And as you know this very well, in this very shir, or other shiurim or experiences, when the person who happens to be speaking, we're not going to get into names here, uses illustrations or metaphors that speak to people's personal lives, there's a level of interest that is very palpable. You could feel it in the air. When the one who teaches reads text, even if it's explained, I'm not talking it's complete, even if it's explained, it's a different level. Why? Because this is about seeing what Torah says, what Chassidus says, what the Alter Rebbe is teaching, not about my life necessarily.
But our whole avoda is trying to make that interface.
So the Balatanya was telling his colleagues, you're telling me no seichel, emotions. I'm explaining to you, if you'll only have a Judaism that begins with emotion, what's going to happen is it only remains limited to the very experience of self, and therefore I'll tell you what's going to happen, he says. As long as you're going to have somebody who can actually inspire you emotionally, that may be very powerful. But if you're not even going to have that, then often you're going to be left with nothing. On the other hand, if it begins with Havana, with understanding Elikus, which is a challenge to make emotional, because it's Ein Sof, but you're going to work with that, and some of it won't become emotional, but some of it will, even at a time when emotions are compromised, because it's hard to get emotional, but you'll be connected to truth ideas that will ultimately define you. You'll have what to get emotional about. And those are the two systems of Atzamais versus Basar. Atzamais, bones connected to the brain, Basar, flesh connected to the heart. We're holding page 155, Daf Ayin Ches, column 1. It's interesting, in bones, in Atzamais, there's what's called the marrow, right? The marrow of the bone. In Yiddish it's called, or in Halach it's called the moyach. The marach, what is it called? The marach, The moyach, it's called the moyach. The marrow of the bone, which is called moyach, as he says here, that in Chachmas Nituach, the bones are uniquely connected to the moyach, to the brain. The meat, the flesh, is uniquely connected to the blood. And you have the arteries that connect the moyach to the leiv. Everything biologically is also reflected spiritually in Ruchnius and Avodas Hashem. That's where it begins, and then it manifests physically. That there's two different elements in the experience of Yiddishkeit. One is known as Haskalah, and one is known as Hargosha. Haskalah is basically the hisbonenus with a person's mind. The ability for a person to think and to learn and to understand, to appreciate. And that comes through learning and learning and internalizing and understanding. And that's the Yigiyas HaMoyach, it's working with the Moyach. And then there is the experiential element of it, which is the emotional relevance. And that's always much harder, because a person could learn about things and, as we said, remain detached. Emotions means you're attached, you're connected to it. You get emotional about it. When you're emotional about something, it means it affects you. You're not aloof, you're not detached. And in each one there's a tremendous milah that the other one doesn't have. The milah in Midas is obvious. The milah in Midas is that it's personal, it's experiential. You're not a computer, as we said. You're not just, a database. V'chi oren gavruhu. You're not just an Oren Kodesh who Taka has holy ideas and svarim in him, but he remains an ark. He remains a doimim. But rather, it touches you. It affects you. On the other hand, there's a tremendous inyan in the Mailan Haskal, in the Moyach. And that is that by definition, Haskala, real Seichel, is you're looking for the truth of something. You're not looking for how it affects you. By definition, the concept of Seichel is you want to know what the truth is. It's irrelevant of how it affects me. It's the humility to ask not what it can do for me, but actually to find out what the truth is, what the emes is. Put it differently, as he says, the moment you're going from Seichel to Midas, the information has to go through a tremendous tzimtzum. It has to go through a tremendous tzimtzum, a tremendous restrictiveness, in order for it to be able to be relevant to me. For something to be relevant to me, it has to speak to who I am today. Not necessarily will truth, Kamoshu, speak to me who I am today. It's too big, it's too loaded, or in his words, it's infinite. And the midas would be in this battle with Mitziyusam, so therefore, as I said yesterday, that many of the Chachmei Hachsidus, colleagues of the Balatanya, felt that the Ikka was Hergish. The main avoid of Yiddishkeit, Al Piderech HaBal Shem Tov, was only Hergish, feelings. And you could see it, you see even till today, the residue of it, that in many Chassidish Chatzeris, the focus was always only emotions, feelings, islavos, passion. The way you daven, especially by davening, because that's the main time of dvekus, like he said. By davening, especially the slavos, the dvekus, the nigunim, the screaming, the making with the hands, passion, hearts. The sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe was the Rebbe Rayatz, Rabbi YY Jacobson. He traveled with his father, the Rebbe Rashab, Reb Shalom Ber, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, to Vienna in 1903. So the fascinating story, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe went to visit Dr. Freud, Sigmund Freud, for a few months in the winter of 1903, Tafrish Samach Gimel. Appella de Kazakh. He went all the way from Lubavitch, which is in Belarus, traveled all the way to Vienna, 1903, and spent a few months with Sigmund Freud. He would visit him. Freud, yeah. Shloimele Freud.
Straighten Freud out.
Huh? It's an extraordinary story. Huh?
You were sick when you went to shul.
He said he was having challenges, and he wanted to speak to him. Then he was known as a big neurologist, and he was there by him. He was there for a few months by him, and but he was in Vienna at the time. So in the morning, he would go with his son to a shul, and they would learn for 6 hours together every morning till the afternoon. I guess he would see him later in the afternoon, or not every day, probably a few times a week. I don't know. So they would learn Choshen Mishpat with Tur, Beis Yosef, and all the Mefarshim. The Achronim on Tur on Choshen Mishpat. Tur and Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat, around 6 hours every day. So they went to a shtibel in Vienna, was known as the Primishlan shtibel. It was Primishlan Chassidim. You heard of Rebbe Meir Primishlan. He was from the Big Tzaddikim. So there was a group known as, it still exists, it's a small, it's not, Primishlan. So there was a shtibel of Primishlan Chassidim, and no one knew who the Rashab was. He came from Belarus, and he wanted it that way. He liked being incognito, so he would sit with his son 6 hours, learn Choshen Mishpat. One day, an elder Yid, a Chassidish Yid, comes over to him, And he says, Junger Mann, a ganze Tag Choshe Mishpat. A bissel Harz. Your Yiddishkeit is also kalt. He says, mamish als kalt. Halacha mit halacha Choshe Mishpat, he says. You need to inspire your heart, he says. Mit auf Anwarten in the hearts. Your heart has to be on fire. So the Rayatz is watching this. His father's the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he's telling this to him. But he's quiet. He knows that his father would be... and he starts giving him Musar. It's not a derech. You need both. You need Choshe Mishpat, but Anwarten in the hearts. So his father, the Rebbe Rashab, looks at this Yid and he says, Vi Varmen on the hearts. You're right. Vi. So he says, Ichel de brengen a seferel. And you should start learning it. And you'll start learning it, you'll understand what it means to have a heart for Yiddishkeit. And he goes to the other room and he brings back a Tanya. And he gives the Lubavitcher Rebbe the Tanya and he says, Na Junger Mann, you take this sefer and start learning it and you'll develop a heart to Yiddishkeit. So the Rayat says his father took the Tanya, looked at it, and says, yeah, a good sefer. This is a good sefer. That was the conversation. And but it brings out the point. What was this Jew saying? What this Jew was saying is, where's the heart? Right? Where are your emotions? And yet, as I said, the Balatanya felt that the haskalah of Elikus, the understanding of Elikus, is critical. It's significant. Why? Because he felt without it, what's missing is, was machst du mit dem Kopf? You want to finish?
No, it's so true.
Why?
Because it gives you a seichel. What are you working for with the heart if you have, you don't know for what?
That's the challenge. The
challenge. The empty suit.
Right. The challenge is that the heart is what makes me feel good at the moment. So sometimes a person comes into a room and they're singing a nice niggin. So you get inspired, you get into the mood. But an hour later, it's all over. Why is it all over? Because you were in an atmosphere where people were inspired, there were emotions, so you got emotional. You went with the flow. But it didn't become part of your humanness, part of your system, because you don't understand.
Was he, in this way, was he in a sense a forerunner of what was going to happen in Pshischa years later? Or was this a completely unrelated philosophic sort of debate?
I think it's connected, but I don't think it's mamash connected. I mean, I think the Mahalach, there's some common denominator there. But over there, it was Bechlal on learning. And here the focus was on learning in Yonim of Elikus, on learning, understanding godliness, Torah's Anista, Torah's Baal Shem Tov, taking it and communicating it in a system of Chachma Bina Das. Or to put it in different words, emotions work if you have a tremendous tzaddik who's taka on fire and you watch him or you see him or you're in his presence, it awakens the fire in you. What if you're not going to have that one day? What are you going to be left with? So you're going to have to fake emotions, and that's the worst. The worst thing in the world is to fake emotions because you're left dry, cold, and dead. But what happens? So if you have people of stature who mamash are on fire, l'avodas Hashem, and other people watch them, so their fire evokes your fire. The big fire triggers the small fire. What if you're not going to have that one day? So now people are left to their own devices, and they may have fine leaders, but not leaders of the stature of people who lived in that generation, the students of the Maggid of Mezrich, who were Kedoshei Elyon, one. They were great tzaddikim, whether you're dealing with the Noam Elimelech, or the B'zush of Anapoli, or the Kupatitchever, or the Chayz of Lublin. I mean, the Koshin Samagid, or the Chernobyl, I mean, each one in their own way, they were different. But each one in their own way was a fireball of inspiration. But he felt you come to a generation where you don't have that anymore. So what is the emotions going to be based on? If you didn't learn the information and apply it and absorb it, so what are you going to get emotional from? So you're going to have to make believe that everybody is feeling. So sometimes you can get emotional from the atmosphere. Every Jew has a neshama inside, but in order to be able to access it, in order to be able to trigger it, he felt you have to allow for the individual experience. And the individual experience can only happen if people understand things. If people understand, then it's about you. It's not just about the tzaddik. This was a big machlokes. As I said a few times, then I don't know if you can understand so much what he meant. I think 200 years later, it becomes a little clearer what he meant. If you look how Chassidus operates today in 2017, and what's going on in various Hasidic courts, and there's a tremendous frustration. I hear this all day, emails and conversations with people, good people. When they grow up in Hasidic courts, they ask, what's Chassidus? What is it? What is it? What is it? What do we believe in? We believe in Streimlach and Shalashudas. What is it? What is it? It's just another chumrah, another gzeira. Our wives can't do this. Our kids can't do this. No internet. What is it? No, but a lot of people just don't know. They mamish don't know. Nobody thinks they have to educate them. They just have to go with the system, go with the flow. The moment they ask too many questions, it's up in courses. You're not allowed to ask questions. And people are left mamish hanging dry. So people who go with the flow, it works for them. But people who are a little more, curious or inquisitive, there's tremendous breakdown. Never mind all the people that make believe they're in the system, but really they're out of the system, which is huge percentages beyond what most people around this table will imagine. Because everything looks good on the outside, and on the inside it's often decomposed. The Balatanya, I think, felt all of this very acutely, because he writes about this in his own way. Not explicit, but the concept. And that's why he was such a proponent of people learning and understanding the yisoidus of Yiddishkeit, the yisoidus of Chassidus. And in a way, he spent every maimer, he will not stop with his systems, but yesh and ayin and yesh, because he felt if you don't understand the mechus of what Yiddishkeit is, what avodas Hashem is, what a neshama is, what Torah is, what mitzvahs are, what tefillah is, etc., then ultimately the emotions are very volatile, and they will not have the staying power, the permanence. As long as you're in the presence of a great tzaddik, it's beautiful. The moment you're on your own, or you're in a generation when you're on your own, what are you left with? To have the backbone, you need the pnimius. Pnimius means it has to become yours. It also has to do with the fact, can people be independent? Can people be independent? People who go with the flow are not independent? That's an interesting question. Let's think about it. People who go with the flow, are they independent or not? It's like the guy who said, just because I'm paranoid, it doesn't mean the whole world is not chasing me. Usually if you go with the flow, you got nothing. To go with the flow is fine. The problem is, it's fine. Every person has to, see what works for their life. The problem is not going with the flow. The flow may be going in a very good place. The problem is when you're going with the flow and you're not there. There's no soul there. There's no person there. That becomes very, very painful.
Can't emotions mislead you? Especially if you're not sure if there's a God. You always have emotions for something. But not.
That's number one. Why, if there's only emotion without seichel, it's not internalized. It's external inspiration. It's not internal inspiration. There's another element, and that is emotions by definition. Even if there are emotions, what are you getting emotional about? You're getting emotional about things which are meaningful to you. Things which are meaningful to you is never about the full truth. It's about what works for me. Seichel, on the other hand, is transcendence. It allows you to learn about reality that is beyond you. That's its chisaron. Its chisaron is you don't necessarily get emotional about it, but it expands your horizons to something that is beyond you. In other words, a Yiddishkeit that is only based on emotion, not on askala, is actually, he felt, one where you're selling yourself out for very small things. In other words, you're not allowing yourself to experience the full grandeur of truth. Where in Seichel you could learn things that are befedish above you and beyond you, and then let your emotions look up to that. Don't dumb down the truth. All emotions, I don't mean it so dramatic, but all emotions is dumbed down truth. Because it has to be for me, it has to work for me. You'll see, people get emotional about things that speak to their soul. Real infinity can't directly speak to my soul. It's too big. It's too infinite. So we want to create a Judaism just based on emotion. It's called feel-good Judaism. Feel good, right? But feel good about what? If it's a real emotion, it has to be feel good. That's when I get excited. I can't get excited about something that doesn't feel good. Feel good means it has to be limited to what speaks to my heart today. Not tomorrow, not yesterday, today. So what often happens is the person's entire perspective is a very limited perspective, where the moyach allows the person to soar beyond themselves. It allows you to transcend beyond your own identity, to look for the emes, not how the emes feeds me. And that's a very big difference. And that was also another major component. And the difference then is, when you're left without emotion, you're still holding on to something real, because you understood. But if you don't have the whole seichel experience, you're left without the emotion, you're left without anything. And because of that, he felt as critical as the meat component of Yiddishkeit is, you have to have the bones, the atzomos, which is connected to the moyach. And you need the arteries that then connect the moyach to the lave, the brain to the heart.
What do you do with the skin?
The skin? Oh, we'll soon see.
What is
The skin goes to the kohen. The skin doesn't go on the mizbeach.
Doesn't have any ability?
We'll soon see. Goes to the kohen, not to the mizbeach. He's going to address it. Huh?
Moshe Elian didn't foresee this, said there were fireballs. They didn't chayza
You want to know why they didn't foresee
What was
this?
their-
Why
what
Dafka
was
Al
their
Balatanya?
defense? What was the negative? That was more of a...
I'll tell you why.
It was the match.
It's not pshat. These things are not always a choice. It's who you are. The Rebbe Yitzchak Berditchev had to be Rebbe Yitzchak Berditchev. It was who he was. You know what I mean? It wasn't up as let me choose that role. Let me choose. This is who they were. They were kol kuloi eish. And Rebbe Yitzchak Berditchev happened to be a gon oilam. He was. People don't realize. They think Berditchev was just a nice guy who used to say nice things about Jews. He was an Av Bezdin in huge cities. He was a big lamdan. He was a big charif. Berditchev was a big kehillah. Before Berditchev, he was another two kehillas. I mean, he was thrown out in the middle of the night. But he was in another two huge kehillas, Pinsk. I mean, these were big. He was the Av Bezdin. He was a big lamb in the Berditchev. But he was a shtick fire.
This was his unique genius.
That was his, and it was the Balatanya was his neshama. I don't think it was a choice. It was like, really, you have a svara, but I have a different svara. This is who they were. This is how they lived. This was their neshama. This was their shayrish neshama.
Yesterday you mentioned they fought the Balatanya.
A few people, the Berditchev not. The Berditchev defended him. Berditchev wrote a very sharp letter to the Avram Kaliska. Avram Kaliska wrote to the Alter Rebbe, I saw Tanya, it's not to say for Aseichel, it's say for Aseichel. It's not what we heard from the Maggid. You're deviating from the Maggid, from the Baal Shem Tov. And the Alter Rebbe wrote about Avram Kaliska a very sharp letter. He said, I'm deviating from the Maggid. Don't you remember what happened in Tovkuf Lamed? And Tovkuf Lamed, Rabbi Avram Kaliska, who was a fireball, used to go to the forest with his Talmidim, and they would hang from the trees like monkeys. They would hang upside down. Because they wanted to completely, it was an avoid, they wanted to reject the whole world and just be on ecstasy with God. Bitlayesh, they would hang from the trees and sing and dance. And the Maggid was very, very upset. Because the Misnagdim used that as good fodder. I mean, look at this crazy cult. And the Maggid wanted to excommunicate him from Chassidus. He wanted to say, don't come here. And the Balatanya went to the Maggid. And it's a gebetin that he means well, his kavanas l'shem shamayim, he could be educated. He shouldn't throw himself. I said, I'm the one who kept you. I'm the one who influenced the Maggid to keep you, because he wanted to throw it. Now you're telling me that I'm deviating? He was hurt by it. But the Berditchever wrote back to the Kalisker and said, You're speaking about the Balatanya? He says, we know who was the most favorite Talmud of the Maggid. We know there was Chaviv Ma'oid Be'enei Admur. And he said famously, we haben alle gegessen von ein Schüssel und der Litvak hat zugehabt the Smetana. We all ate from one bowl, and the Litvak grabbed the cream on the top. He grabbed, The Berditchev, wir haben alle gegessen von ein Schüssel und der Litvak hat zugenommen und hat zugehabt the Smetana, the cream. But he wasn't Alter Rebbe, the Berditchev. He was Amachutan, but he wasn't. there was a big chasana known as the Zlobin Chasana. Zlobin is a city in the Ukraine. The Baditcher had a son, his name was Rebbe Meir. He passed away in his lifetime. And there was a shidduch of Rebbe Meir's son. So the father wasn't there, so the Baditcher became like a father. And he was a shidduch with the Mittler Rebbe's daughter, who was the Alter Rebbe's granddaughter. So Barditchev is in the Ukraine, and Liadi, which is the city where the Balatanya is, in Russia, near Belarus. Barditchev and Liadi are far from each other, so they chose Zlobin as a middle point to make the wedding. The wedding was...
We learned the mimer from the wedding.
Ketzad Merakdin Lifnei Hakala was at that wedding, yeah. The wedding was Parshas Erev Shabbos Kodesh Nosoi Tovkov Samach Zayin, 1807, in June, in the summer. So they were together a whole weekend, Friday, Shabbos, Sunday, Monday, or Thursday. So a lot of people came, the Alter Rebbe with the Baditchev together. So there's a lot of stories from that Shabbos. The Baditchev he was a Yid, he was in the middle of the Maimah, the end of the Maimah, Ketzad Merakdin. It's not printed in Likkutei Torah, this is Torah Shabbal Peh. But the Alter Rebbe finished the Maimah and he said, Tzaddik Hashem b'chol derachav v'chassid b'chol masav. He said, Tzaddik l'mayla is the Eibishter, and Tzaddik l'mata is the Blev Yitzchak Baditchev. That's how he finished the Maimah. So you understand the respect they had for each other. Tremendous. But it was different drachim. And the whole Shabbos, there was, people saw a lot of differences. The Alter Rebbe used to say Chassidus a lot. The Baditchev was always in a Hislavus. And at one point, they had to go to the chuppah. The chuppah, it couldn't be on Shabbos, we just learned. It had to be Friday. They used to do weddings on Friday, always, because the Suda, first of all, Al Pi Kabbalah, the Zman of the Zivug is Friday night. Oynes Talmidei Chacham, Arizal is Mafli, but Friday night is Zivug, between the Chassan and the Kalas. They do the weddings on Friday. And also, Pashat Mitzad money, the Suda, anyway, Shabbos, you're doing a Suda, so you don't have to pay a caterer twice, $80,000, right? You just pay $25 once, and you have a Suda Sachasa. So people made the wedding Friday, and then the Suda was Friday night, because they didn't have Sudas a whole week. So Shabbos, you ended up having a Suda. On the way to the chuppah, there was a door, and the door was very narrow, extremely narrow. And only one person could walk in at a time. So the Balatanya and the Baditcher were walking to the chuppah. Rebbe Yitzchak Baditcher was older than the Balatanya. They come to the door, and one person has to walk in first. So who goes in first? So the Baditcher returns to the Alter Rebbe and says, Mechitten, Egeit Esht, you go first. He said, no, you go first. No, you. So now starts a whole argument. He says, you're older than I am. He says, yeah, but you're the Balatanya. Back and forth. The Chassan and Kala are waiting. And they're arguing who goes in. So the Baditcher returns to the Alter Rebbe and he says something. And you have to understand, he wasn't joking. He said, "Nu, lame gein durch de Wand. Let's go through the wall. Let's go through the wall." So the Alter Rebbe said, "Nein, soll de Tür werden breiter." We don't go through the wall, we go through the door. The door needs to expand. It seems like a small conversation, but it's a conversation that encapsulates two perspectives. For the Baditchever, the wall and the door are equal alternatives. This is the natural path, this is the supernatural path. You can't go here, you go there. The Alter Rebbe said, no, you have to go through the door, but let the door expand. Because this is basically what we're talking about. Whenever you're dealing with seichel, with intellect, it means you want that godliness should be internalized within the human intellectual faculties of the person. It shouldn't just be a spiritual, transcendental experience based on the soul, which is a chelik elokamimal, like we learned also in Adam Kiyakriv, but it should be one that permeates the human faculties of the animal soul, which is what seichel is. In other words, we don't go through the wall, we go through the door. But the door needs to expand. It's a whole different experience. Which you can understand why people didn't like that. If you can go through the wall, why are you going through doors? Right? Go through the wall. Breach limitations. Become transcendental. In many ways, for some of people who look at the Balatanya, compromise the intensity of Chassidus, the ecstasy of Chassidus. Stop with explanations. He said, no, I want the ecstasy to remain eternal. Your ecstasy is going to be temporary. Not that I compromise, but you understand, it compromises on it. It's not, doesn't seem so exciting. It's a fact. People, to learn a Maimah Likkutei Torah Kedeboyi, yeah? It takes a lot of avodah. You open up a Kedushas Levi, yeah? You ever hear a good word in the parsha? Sfas emes, bei Maim Chayim, Avodas Yisrael, Moy V'Shemesh, Tver Shloime, Noyim Elimelech, Oyer Hamayir, Emes, Moy Reinayim. Is that bekannt with these Sfarim? You don't even know these Sfarim. So Mamash left with nothing. Huh? It's one paragraph. It's one paragraph, maybe two, maybe three. Yeah, if you're lucky, you'll have 4 paragraphs. But people who have a sensitivity to Chassidus, it's fiery. There's always sparks. There's energy there. You feel there's Avos Yisrael. There's Avos. It's brent a fire by them. It's brent. Or the Moreh Naim did. There was a fire by them. There was a. You could feel it. If you're sensitive to it, you feel it. If not, not. But it's vertlach. It's vertlach. So if you're looking for a vort, yeah. You open up Parshas Pinchas, Parshas Mad. There's a word, Bein HaMetzorim. You open up. It's nice, beautiful vertlach. Whether it's the Apterov, whether it's the Pshischer, whether it's Talmidei Hamagid, whoever it was, whether it's the Chayzer of Lublin and all the tzaddikim. You open up a Likkutei Torah with Atanya, systems with long biurim, long explanations. It's almost like a Sugya Nigla, with lumdison, with questions and answers and rayas and back and forth. You see with the structures. And he goes from one inyan to another inyan. And many people felt that this is not Torah Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov came to be Mechaya Yidden, to ignite their souls. But the Baal Tanya insisted that this is it's short circuiting Chassidus. It's a derech tzara, it's a short path, but the Gemara says in Eruvin that there was a child traveling. You know the story, yeah? There was a child traveling, and he came to a fork. He was traveling to Yerushalayim. Rabbi YY ben Chananya says, "Ma'olam lo nitzchani adam ela tinik v'tinoikus." He came to a fork, and he said, "Which is the way to Yerushalayim?" So the child said, "Zu derech tzara v'arucha, v'zu derech arucha k'tzara." This is the short, long path. This is the long, short path. Erev and Daf Nun Dalet. So he took the short, long path. It was very short. A few minutes later, he was at the outskirts of Yerushalayim. There was one problem. There was an orchard full of thorns and gates, and it obstructed his path. So he went back and he tells the child, "Why did you tell me it's a short path?" He says, "I also told you it's long." I said, "It's short and long." So the other path was very long and winding and long and winding. When he got there, he got there. So in the introduction to Tanya, in the Sharbla, the Baal Tanya says, this is Derech Harucho K'tzara. What did he mean, Derech Harucho K'tzara? Not short, it's long. But it's going to be short. Why? Because when you get there, it's going to be authentic. You'll be able to be there. Because the system is one that will become internalized within you. You won't go through walls. You can't always go through walls. Sometimes you have to go through doors. If you're living on a higher space, you can maybe go through walls, but when you go back to yourself, what are you left with? What are you left with? So the Seichel allows you to be able to internalize it. It becomes part of who you are as an individual who understands. It changes your perspective. And then the emotions can come from that. And those emotions will have the staying power. So that was part of what's going on. Did I answer your question? Huh?
What was that with the story? Who
Who went
went in first?
in first? I don't know who went in first.
What's super?
I bring out the Nakuda. I don't know who went in first. Huh? They went together? Kenza? I don't know. I don't know who went in first. Huh? Kenza? So on the way back, the chasana was over, the Baal Tanya was going home, so he got into his wagon. He had a balagol, he had a coachman who would take him. And this Yid was with him for 20, 30 years. So he sometimes a balagola knows more than everybody else. Huh? Anoichi Asoincha, yeah. He was with him for 20, 30 years. And it was after the chasana. Baal Tanya was in what's called a rega de b'dicha. He was in a simcha. So he turns to the balagola and he says, "No." He was he loved it, but the Alter Rebbe loved it, but Baditsheva. He just loved him. He loved him avas nefesh. He mamish loved him. So he says, "Was sagt auf my mechuten?" You know, like a father would say, "What do you say about my nachas?" So he says, "Was sagt auf my mechuten?" He tells the balagola, "What do you say about my mechuten, the Baditsheva?" So the Yid says, "I am mechuten is pilei ployim." He's wonder of wonders. Aber a Rebbe YY is nicht da. Your mechutin is pile ployim, but a Rebbe like you, there's none. He was margish something. The Baditchva was taking pile ployim. He was in heaven. He was a shtik pella. The respect, even today, the Baditchva, there's a certain energy comes out. But in terms of synthesizing all facets of creation, in terms of synthesizing all facets of Torah, in terms of connecting heaven to earth and earth to heaven, in terms of encompassing the full spectrum of Yiddishkeit and understanding the destiny of the Jewish people, right? From Avram Avinu till Bias HaMashiach, and wanting to carry the Jewish people in that sense. The Baal HaGola said this is something extraordinary. It's a gift that you have. Now, here there's one more nekuda that has to be emphasized, and that's negeya really here in this maimer, and that is the even when there are emotions. Again, emotions are the key because they're experiential. Emotions are the key. But without Havana, what's missing? What's missing is it could be very circumstantial because it didn't permeate your own nefesh habahamis, your own animal soul. But there's also another nekuda, and that's the main nekuda, what he wants to say here. And that is that Moichin is nicht sich. Midas is sich. You understood what I said? Atatavasta? I'll translate, which won't help probably. I'll explain. Moichin is not you. Midas is you. This is extremely important. And that's its maila and that's its chisara. The definition of midas is zich. I know in text people say love you without I, but that's grammatically incorrect. There's no emotion without an I. Emotion means I feel. If there's no I can't love you. That's why if you don't think you exist, you can't love anybody. V'ahavta l'recha kamoicha doesn't only mean love somebody else as much as you love yourself. It also means v'ahavta l'recha kamoicha, like you love yourself. If you hate yourself, you're not loving anybody else. You don't even know what it means. There's no I to love. The definition of emotions means there's an I. That's what emotions are. Emotions is I am responding to you. Positively or negatively. I love you, I hate you. I'm overwhelmed by you, I'm afraid of you. I want to be close to you, I want to run from you. But it's how you are affecting me. That's what the word hispilus means. What does the word hispilus? You say hispilus, right? What does hispilus mean? It comes from the word pu'ula. This is having an impact. Pu'ula, it's moving me. I'm moved. I'm transformed. I'm triggered. I am triggered. Midas is always about me. So to use the yeshivische Sprach. In Seichel, ich bin adin in de Zach. In Midas, the Zach is adin in mir. Midas is always about how the reality affects me. That's why I'm emotional. That's not moichin. Moichin, intellectual understanding, is the exact opposite. If somebody is learning a svara in Gemara, and somebody says, I'll tell you pshat, and he says pshat, and the guy says, I don't like his attitude in the Gemara. I don't like his attitude. Or I don't like what you look like today, and therefore I'm not accepting your svara. You're out for lunch. The whole idea of haskala, of his beinanus, of moichin is, it's not about you. It's about the text. It's about what it says. The idea of moichin is to go away completely from yourself and try to tune in to the truth of the concept. It may be challenging you. You may not be interested in it. Tough luck, in simple English. The worst thing in moichin is if you get it personally involved. That's what sheikhad is. What's shoichet? That's what shoichet is. Shoichet means you're personally involved. I have a bias. The moment you have a bias, you're possible. Rabbeinu Bechaya says, B'nai Slavchot came to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they said, we want a chelik in Eretz Yisrael from our father, right? Avinu lo haya ba'adas koirach. Our father wasn't a troublemaker. Vayakriv Moshe es mishpoton lifnei Hashem. Moshe tells God, take care of this. Other questions, Pesach Sheni, he doesn't say, he says, I'll ask Hashem. Rabbeinu Bechaya says, the moment they told him, our father was on your team, Moshe said, I'm puzzled there. I'm puzzled. Sorry. I can't be the rabbi. Vayakriv Moshe es mishpoton lifnei Hashem. The moment you're telling me your father was on my team, it's shoichet, I'm puzzled this, it's over. Puzzled din. Shoichet. This is even Moshe Rabbeinu. Why? That's what a human being is. I mean, it has pnias, every person. We're not objective. Huh? You can't. You have to know, Taka. You have to know. If you're a dayan in a case, and you have any level of bias, even if you don't like the other guy's nose, you're pasaladir. You take a pasaladir. You're disqualified. Adam karev eitzalatzmai. The definition of a dayan is he's objective, and if you're not, you're taking now let it sit. If you like this guy's father and mother, right, and fired the krig, he was nice to you, right, and you have cheshboinus on the family, it's over. You're puzzled with it. Now don't start asking me questions why this. I know. Why? Because the definition of moichin is truth, not me. The definition of midas is me, my experience of it. So let's understand. If I'm learning something in a mode of moichin, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get lost in the text, in the truth. The less me, the better it is. Stop mixing in yourself. See, but I don't like this. We're not talking about you. We're not thinking the inyan, not you. We're not thinking the emes. That's the definition of seichel. The nekuda of seichel is transcendence. Put yourself aside and ask what is the truth of this reality of this kind. Imagine a scientist who has an agenda that God shouldn't exist. Can he be a scientist? If you have an agenda before you go to study science, physics, cosmology, you have an agenda. You want to make sure God doesn't exist. You're not a scientist.
It's called,
or the other way around.
Today it's called fake news.
Why? Not because you don't have a good head, because everything is manipulative. You have an agenda, you have an emotion. I have an emotion. I want to prove, I have an axe to grind. I'm going to manipulate my seichel. The real definition of seichel is no agendas whatsoever. Seeking the truth. Real, that's what real moichin is. It's not about me. The whole experience of midas is all about me. I'm excited, I'm emotional. So the blessing of moichin, what is a blessing in moichin is a curse in midas. What is a blessing in midas is a curse in moichin. In avodas Hashem, which path do you go? So on one hand you say midas, yeah. Ich will füllen the Eberster. Ich will füllen a Geschmack in Yiddishkeit. But the Rebbe tainet, yeah, the Rebbe tainet that you must have moichin. Why must you have moichin? Because what happens when you have midas, your Judaism is always dumbed down according to where your ego stands today. Mashenkin moichin always allows you an experience of transcendence above yourself. The challenge is, and this is the challenge that Chabad has, and Chabad struggles with this till today, that when you have moichin, yeah, so it's not you and not you and not you and not you and not you, and where are you? Sometimes you're just not there. You don't translate it emotionally. That's the opposite challenge. Huh? Not only Chabad struggles with this. Yes.
Are you saying that if you have a shaila by Rav, we know the Rav has some bias against you, you should not ask him?
Of course. What's the question?
Is there a way to know if you're absolutely being a
If a rabbi hates your guts, you should not ask him, no. If he has a bias against you, I don't think he could be a rabbi. I don't think he can be a rabbi.
How's this?
If you need somebody in court to testify against you, you can hire him. But I don't think he can be a rabbi. If you want to lose a din Torah, you should go to him. But I don't think if you want a fair trial.
You're asking about Allah.
Why do I get a headache when I think of money?
You get a headache when you think of Moichen because your head is working. No. You get a headache in the world of Moichen because I think you're experiencing what I'm saying as a little abusive. Right? Not you. But it's really very rich. It's the ability to get lost in something that's above you.
You might not live up to that status, but it's still
That's true, but it's good to know. It's good to expand your horizon.
Right.
It's even good to know that I can't feel this. That's also good. But don't compromise truth just for the sake of self.
Part of the reason.
Moichen is ask not. Ask not what Judaism, what truth can do for you. Ask how you can surrender to truth. Midas is, no, Midas is ask what truth can do for you. That's what I'm asking.
Part of the headache is that you need tremendous self-confidence. You need self-confidence and to be firm in your footing to be able to say, I'm willing to surrender myself. And it's
Right.
not going to be about me.
And then do those
It's
muscles.
completely not about me. I'm ready to exercise those muscles. To whom?
Yourself.
To whom? To truth.
Is there a dogma of this in a marriage or interpersonal
Of course there's a dogma for this in marriage.
But the answer that's why you get married.
The balagula, huh? There is your emotional experience in marriage, midas, and we know without that the marriage is pretty
Lame.
whatever.
Lame.
Let's use the word lame, right? On the other hand, there's that concept in marriage where I really have to ask myself, who is the other person? Without trying to right away say how it affects me, how it doesn't affect me. Really trying to wonder about the other person almost as a curious scientist. Let's say your wife wasn't your wife. Let's say your wife wasn't... I'll give an example, right? You have a therapist, and your wife would go to a therapist, and the therapist will ask her questions about her life. He has no personal agenda, but she could say whatever she wants, because after the session he goes home for lunch. Right? He forgets about it. He has another 20 patients that day. And he gets paid. Even if he's a nice, fun man, but he has another life. For you, it's your wife. It's not like she's this and she's that. But a real marriage needs that component. Like imagine you could listen to your wife, I'm not going to say detached, but not trying to ask how it affects me, what it does for me. Really try to figure out who you are on your terms, not on my terms. Who you are. And that's very, very valuable. Because without that, your whole relationship is limited to your own paradigm. I put you in my box, I decide who you are, and I'm getting excited or I'm getting upset. Maybe put yourself aside and find out who I am. And let's understand even more than this. When we experience things emotionally, we don't experience them. We experience them through our own prism. We're not even touching who they are. We're just experiencing them the way they affect us, which means we're only getting the part of them that we can put into our box and get excited about one way or another way. Moichen actually allows us to see the truth for what it is without any experience of self-imposed ideas and conceptions on the person. So in Midas, you're always a din in me. In Moichen, I'm always a din in you. When I'm learning Sa'ah Shtickle, learning means I don't exist. What's the halach in Choshen Mishpat? La'olam yehei alecha din pruta kedin meya. A real dayan is sitting in court. Two brothers come. They have a Yerusha of $300 million, like some people in this room. And they're killing each other. For someone. And they come to the Rav to make shalom. $300 million, right? After that, come two schnorrers. And they're fighting over a $5 bill that a guy gave them in the middle of Birchas Krishma. They're fighting over a $5 bill, right? And the Rav says, "Geitareis, idiot, and I have time for $5. I deal with $300 million court cases because the commission is nicer." I'm just joking. That's not a dayan. That's not a dayan. $5 is just like $300 million. Why? What do you mean? It's a joke. Take out $5 and give it to them. The answer is because the dayan, the real dayan, it's not negeya the money. What's negeya? The din in Shulchan Aruch. The din in Shulchan Aruch is the zelbe din for $5 or $300 million. It's what God wants. What God wants is only for $300 million, not $5. Who says? You know what? It's what Ratzon Hashem is. Vazak Torah. The halacha in Baba Metzia is not negay $300 million or 20 cents. That's a din in Shulchan Aruch. This is not, I'm not saying a theory. It says in Shulchan Aruch, La'olam yehei alecha din pruta kedin meya. 20 cents, like $100 million. If not, you're not a dayan. You already have definition. You're a businessman. A businessman, yeah. Businessman is a big difference between $300 million and $5. MS? Was sagst du? So dachilik?
When I come across the 300 million.
You let me know when you have the 300 million. There's a difference, right? But in Choshen Mishpat, what's the difference? So you'll say, what do you mean, you're crazy? Yeah. I'm not dealing here with the reality that affects me. I'm dealing here with the MS. The MS l'may nafka mina. That's the idea of machin. You toif what I'm saying. You're not. Okay. Echt good. That's good. Don't worry. Asach zayn nish toifus. Du sagst es.
You have to remove himself from the situation.
You have to remove it. What is this in Avodas Hashem? What is it in Avodas Hashem? In Avodas Hashem, it's really two different experiences. Moichin is, a person is learning about Hashem, learning about Torah, learning about mitzvahs. And you know what? Ich weiß nicht, what du willst. Just help my life. Help my life. Get rid of my anxiety. I want a better, harmonious man. Whatever. Help my life. It takes a tremendous bittul, tremendous confidence and humility and haba hatalia to be able to actually allow yourself to say, what is the truth? Teach me the truth about God. Teach me the truth about life. Teach me the truth about reality. I may feel uncomfortable. It may at the moment not even speak to me, but I'm not going to compromise that.
It takes a lot of bittul and trust.
Trust, of course. You have to trust. If you don't trust, if the guy is going to sell you the Williamsburg Bridge together with the Manhattan Bridge, all for $5, then it's a whole. Then he has agendas. The world of Midas is a different world. The world of Midas is dafka ask what it can do for me. The world of Midas is the world that we say at the end of Sukkot Zimra on Shabbos. Ubechein. You remember on Shabbos? Avdecha Meshichecha. What's the next words? Ubechein. What's the bechein? Ubechein. What does ubechein mean? The bechein means and thus ubechein. What's the bechein? You spoke and spoke and spoke and spoke. What's the bechein? Ubechein yishtabach shem chalal malkeina. The bechein means I'm looking for the. So what's the bottom line? So what's your point? So get to your point. So what's the conclusion? So what does this do for me? So how is it changing my life? That's a question of midas. A question of moichin is, who decided that truth is so small that it's capable of changing your life today? Who decided that? Maybe you have to conform to truth. Truth doesn't have to conform to you. Why is truth being put into such a box that it's capable of changing my life? Maybe I don't have the maturity or the awareness or even the ability to be able to look up to that and change my life based on it. Maybe I'm too far. Maybe I'm too limited. Maybe. Not really. Okay. So now you're going to ask me, so what's the point? Right? What's the bechein? So that's the bechein. The bechein is that that there's two elements in a relationship. One element in a relationship is where I am part of the experience, and one element of the relationship is where I don't have to be part of the experience. Where I could completely surrender myself and allow myself to hear something that may completely transcend my sensibilities and my emotions and my experiences. Maybe tomorrow I'll be able to translate it emotionally. Hopefully. I will expand tomorrow, in a month, in a year. But I can completely open myself up to something that is completely beyond me. That's, according to the Balatanya, the world of Moichin. And then there's the world of Midas. One is the brain, one is the heart. Between them there's arteries that create a transition, and the arteries always have to narrow and thin out the energy. One, according to him, is the skeleton of Judaism, and one is the flesh of Judaism, as he will explain. One is the atzamas and one is the basar. If one remains only in the brain, it's a major problem, because then you're taka detached. So all's good and fine when you're learning and you're not there and you're just focusing on the truth. But then you come back to yourself, and what are you left with? You're often left with nothing. You're a dry person, you're a cold person, you're a detached person, you're a computer. On the other hand, so therefore you must have the midas. But when the midas are preceded by the moichin, then the midas are challenged to live up to elikus. You don't dumb down elikus to the midas. You lift up your midas to elikus.
Is there a way to know objective truth? I'm being objective truth? Because there's always self.
You're right.
I'm asking, is there a point? Is something
You're right.
that we
Everything
know?
is relative. Everything is relative. What for one person is objective is for another person still subjective.
Is there a way, the Balatanya was writing this, how did he know that he was getting to the truth? Is there a path to know this is the truth? Maybe
if it makes you uncomfortable.
Is that
Often.
Right. Is that the point?
If it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay.
In a healthy way. I don't mean in an abusive way. In a healthy way. Understand the difference?
Yes.
When you hear something that makes you uncomfortable, you probably know it's closer to truth. But I don't mean uncomfortable in a nasty way. Uncomfortable in a good way. You know, when you have a personal trainer and he stretches you and he makes you uncomfortable, you say, that was good. It was a good workout. It wasn't abusive. It was a workout. If he just tells you, here, do this, pick this up 100 times for exercise, you know that...
then you go home and your muscles have a chance to get sore when you're not working them out and to grow. So you leave here and then the muscles grow, the muscles get sore, and that's how they grow from the training session, from the intense exposure.
Right.
So here's Moichin, then we go to davening. Midas.
Like he says, I'm going home. What am I going home? To moichin or to midas?
I don't know where your wife is this morning.
Listening.
Yeah? There was a Yid once, yeah? In America. So, that's like America, the early days, the Amaratzis here was Moiradik. So, there was a new Rav in a shul. He came from Europe, so everybody was a Rav. You know, they had a...
Rabbi.
They spoke Yiddish, they became rabbis.
White pages rabbi.
So the Gabbai of the shul, they called him the sexton. What do they call the Shamasham? Huh? Sexton, yeah, they used to call him. So he comes over to him and he says, Rebbe, it was unbelievable because he portrayed himself to the shul as everything. You know, yeah, canal. So Wednesday he says, by the way, which parsha we're going to be reading on Shabbos, I should be able to prepare. He says, listen, a Balkaira I am, a Darshan I am, a Baltfil I am, a Chazan I am, a therapist I am, a counselor I am. Als bin ich, aber an Novi, das bin ich nicht. Bin ich kein Novi. Yeah. I'm not so arrogant to tell you what we're going to do on Shabbos.
I guess every week there was a different parsha.
So, an Novi bin ich nicht. So, I heard this from my father, who heard this from Rabbi Chadakov. So So you're asking me what are you coming home to? I'm Navi ben Echnish. I'm other things, I'm Echnish Kanavi.
That's not void. That's not
But if your wife was listening to the shir, then I know what you're coming home to.
She asked me what did you learn. Go ahead. Oops.
Weiter mit deinen Scheiles?
Now you opened up for 40 years, been about for 40 years. Learned yesterday about Meichen and
Midas.
can you go without, can you go eat separately or just Meichen and just Midas, or it has to be a
Right.
combination?
That's what you're asking. Yes. I think one can never go only with Moichin or only with Midas, because each one is extremely vital, each one is extremely valuable. The Maila in Midas is Poshet. Midas means emotions. I'm present. I am involved in the experience. There's a very tired mashal that one of the Chassidim gave, who's known as the Rashbatz. Shmuel Betzalel, he was a chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek, and he once explained an idea, explained what das is, but he gave the following mashal. In the olden days, there were yeshuvnikas. You know what yeshuvnikas were? Jews who owned, they lived like on farms, or they had inns, motels. So they lived in little towns. They didn't have minyanim, they didn't have shuls. They didn't have kehillas, infrastructure of kehillas. Al derech. Yeshuvnikas, pasha to Yidden mostly. They didn't have a chinuch. They were pasha to erliche Yidden. Like in villages, yeah, small villages, whether they had an inn, or they worked for the Paritz, or they ran his real estate, his farms, etc. So these Yeshuvnikas, yesterday there, today there, tomorrow you're going to be there. The Chamakim Kavua. Huh? Was? A Yeshuvnik, yeah. So what happens is, they used to hire a malamed for the kids. They had kinderlach, no yeshivas. They had to hire a malamed who would come for a few months. He would go home, Pesach, Yom Tovim. He would get paid and had room and board. He would go home with money to support his family. And he would sit with the children and teach them. And very often these yeshuvnikas were very ignorant. They were illiterate and they didn't even know like Ivra. They were very, very simple Jews who already as little kids were working. They never had a chance to have an education. So there was once a yeshuvnik, he needed the malamed to read the letters that he got because he couldn't read well. So the malamed would also read letters. The Rashbat said, once the yeshuvnik brought the letters to the teacher and he said, read. And the malamed was reading a letter. Word for word, he's reading the letter and explaining it to the yeshuvnik. And in middle, as he's reading it, the yeshuvnik faints. The malamed is intact. The yeshuvnik faints. What did it say in the letter? It said in the letter that the yeshuvnik's father passed away. He heard the news that his father passed away, he fainted. He went into a faint. So the Rashbat said, Ich verstehe nicht, I don't understand. Who's reading the letter? The malamed, the teacher. Who knows what it says? The teacher. Who sees clearly what it says? The teacher. The yeshuvnik is only hearing it from the malamed. The malamed is not emotional. He's reading, kal plutik, he's cold. And the yeshuvnik, who didn't even have access to the letter because he can't read, he's fainting. The answer is, he said in Yiddish, also sein tata. So there's the malamed's tata, so sein tata. The malamed may have access to the information, and without that, the teacher, the villager would have not known the truth, the story. He has access to the information. But sein tata. So he said a Yid can learn and daven in his whole life. Aber sein tata. He's reading letters. He reads and reads. He reads well. He has access to the information. Aber sein tata. It's not his father, sein tata.
So the reading is Moichin?
Yeah. So I'm using this as a mashal for Moichin and Midas. You have access to the information, and you need access to the information. Because if you don't have access to the information, there's nowhere to go with it. You don't have access. But access to the information doesn't make it your father. It means there's a lot of information. For the Yeshuvnik, Segven Zayin Tate, it was his father. It's a different experience. So the Lubavitch Rebbe was once said over this story, and he started to speak to the Chassidim. Now you have to understand, these are Chabad Chassidim. So part of their curriculum is to learn Chassidus every day. In the yeshivas of Tamchet Mimim, you learn Chassidus 3 hours a day. An hour and a half in the morning from 7:30 to 9. And then after that is Shachris, and then Gemara the whole day, Gemara and Halach like in all the yeshivas. But then at night, from 8 or 8:30 till 10 or 8 to 9:30 is again Chassidus. So early morning and late at night is 3 hours a day. So it's a lot. It's a long time. Not enough, but it's something. So he was talking to the Olam. So I'm just saying you'll appreciate what he was saying. He said, everybody here, Mezitz, Milan, Chassidus, Miladin, Nacham Maima, another Maima. And then he started to cry and he says, Aber sinisht ayatata. You don't feel that it's your father. You're not talking about your father. It's more information. So he said, so sepayalt nisht. Doesn't have an impact on you. He says, when you learn, you have to feel that it's your father. So dein tate in Himmel. Avinu Shabashamayim. He started to cry when he said it. Like the Mashal, the Malamed says, I mean, the guy must have been a good guy, just not my father. To give another Mashal from a different extreme, but I guess the point is it is a little similar. In every Jewish shtetl in Eastern Europe, there was something called the Shtot Meshugana. You ever heard of the Shtot Meshugana? And Yesh Oimrim that it also came over to America. Yesh Oimrim. And in America we like doing things by Harchava, so Yesh Oimrim that we were Moisef, we were B'china of Baltoisef. So every city had a Shtot Meshugana. This was the Meshugana of the town, whose job was to entertain the Olam. Lahachis b'em nefesh kol chayim. A few times he would make a circus, he would make shows. So once the Shtot Meshugana gets up and he does a whole show, a circus. And the whole city comes, the men and the women and the children. And Malach. And one Jew is in the crowd and he's crying. So his friend says, Chaim Yankel, we are depressed Jews. Finally we have a little entertainment. Fagin sich zu lachen. Allow yourself to laugh. What do you have to... Right to thinking about the job and the business and the behemoths, and allow yourself to laugh. He says, "Gib a cook of their meshugana. Look at it." He says, "Yeah, but vazalichtonas that meshugana is mein zun. What should I do if this quack is my child?" Huh? Yeah, when the nad is nishmain's lachechach. So you could laugh. It's fine. I can't laugh. The personalization of it is a whole different experience. That's what midas are. Moichen without midas. You read the letter, you read it, you even understand the words, you can explain the grammar, the diction, the sentences, the makeup, the composition. The Yeshuvnik doesn't know Aleph Beis, he doesn't know. It's a whole different experience. That's midas, the personalization. On the other hand, what's midas without moichen? Midas without moichen is he's personally involved, but he doesn't have access to the information. A behema also has emotions. A dog has a lot of emotion. It says in Kabbalah, Kelev, Kuloi Leiv. Kelev, Kuloi Leiv. It's alt hearts. Anybody here owns a dog? Kul emes, kuloi leiv. You take him on a walk, and every few seconds, where's the balabas? For some kids who never fell into addiction and these things, having a dog is not a bad thing. Sometimes it saves them, because they learn that they're valuable. They don't know that they're valuable. Nobody told them they're valuable. And here the dog thinks oilamum loy for them, and even when they're in their bad mood, and they're in a horrible place, right? Their father says, "Come on, get your act together, you nut job." But the dog always loves you and is there for you and always worships you. So sometimes it's very helpful for them. That's a separate sugya. That's Rabbi Lankry's sugya with his farm and the animals and everything else. but it's very powerful. Kulei Leiv. Animals have emotions. Animals have very heavy emotions. Elephants, you know about elephants?
Never forget. Never forget.
They never forget. There's very deep connections. Animals have very deep emotions. But there's an expression in Yiddish, a behema hat keimol nish gesehen de Himmel. What does she emote about? What's her range of emotions? I'm looking for food, I'm looking for this food, that food, that food, that food, that food, that food. Sie hat keimol nish gesehen de Himmel. The range of emotions is extremely primitive. We're talking about a Shtot Meshugana. In the city of Lubavitch, which is a little village, very little. I was there, it's in Belarus, very tiny village. That's where the Mittler Rebbe was, the Tzemach Tzedek was, the Maharash was, the Rashab was, and the Rayatz. And there was also a Shtot Meshugana. There's a Shtot Meshugana there, which Lubavitch still has. And, yes, more than one. But that's a separate sugya. And he was there. Now the Maharash, the Rebbe Maharash, it was very hard to see him. First of all, he was sick. He was a sick man, and the Shtot Meshugana wanted to go on Yechidus. He wanted to go into, and the Gabbai didn't let him. The Meshugana didn't let him go to the Rebbe. So what happened? The Rebbe Maharash, for his health, had to go on a walk every day. So he had a coach, a wagon, and he'd come to the wagon, and the coachman would take him to the forest, and he would spend some time, and then he would come back. So as the Rebbe went on the wagon and started to drive, this Shtot Meshugana jumped on the wagon, so the Gabbai couldn't stop him, and he sat down right near the Rebbe, and they had a whole conversation. He's asking, the Rebbe's talking back and forth, Mamash, a real Meshugana. He finishes, he's excited, he jumps off the wagon. The Chassidim are upset at him, they're angry, the chutzpah he had. So he said, you don't let me go into the Rebbe, and you don't let me go in, I have to do this. Next time, let me go in. He said, we're going to give you makas, but tell us what happened. So I'll tell you what happened. I had a big dilemma. What was your dilemma? He says, there's another Shtot Meshugana in the city of Minsk, in Lithuania. He came to visit me. He told me that he's bored. And Minsk is a big city, so he asked me to join him as a Shtot Meshugana in Minsk. And in Minsk, you have much more people, more than double than in Lubavitch. So there'll be enough money for me and for him because there's much more people. So what do I have to be in Lubavitch alone and he's in Minsk alone? I'll join him. There'll be Tzvei Shtot Meshugayim, and therefore I should move. No, so what do you do? He says, I don't do things without the Rebbe. So that's why I went to the Rebbe and I asked him. You didn't let me go and I jumped on the wagon. Nu, was hat der Rebbe gesagt? The Rebbe said he doesn't think I should do it. Why? For Lubavitch darf euch haben. Lubavitch also needs one. And here, you're the Melech. Once you go to Minsk, there's a second fiddle. You're already subservient. Esh and the Melech. It's not good for your self-esteem, for your identity. Here, everybody loves you, everybody cherishes you. You're the man. Taka, we have a much smaller oilam, MS. Right? What do they say? A big fish in a small pond, right? Than a small fish in a big pond. You want to be a big fish in a small pond? Because you're the fish. You're the fish. It's another mahalach. He says, we know you, we care for you, we love you. Was case timmins. My advice is, bleib da. But the prospects of Parnasa there, Geschmacker, says, yeah, but dignity is equally important. Your dignity, your self-esteem, your identity. And we'll help you out. We'll help you out financially. Good. The Rebbe hat gesagt, I jump over the wagon. So they turn to him and they say, no, what are you going to do? He says, what's the question? What I'm going to do? I'm going to listen to the Rebbe. I'm going to stay. The guy said it's so promising to go to Minsk and this. He says, so what? But the Rebbe said, this is what I do. It makes sense. I'm going to stay here. They said to him, aber du bist doch a Meshugana. So he said a famous expression that they used to chazer for generations. Rabbi YY, he said, Meshuga, aber Seichel darf man haben. Der heißt, Meshuga, aber Seichel darf man haben. Der Rebbe said, to stay bleibt man, darf haben Seichel. Huh? How do I translate?
Very good.
Meshuga, you know what it means. Huh? How do you translate that?
No.
Not crazy.
There's no such thing.
Meshuga. But Seichel you have to have. Seichel means wisdom, perception, perceptiveness. You can't lose your mind in your Meshugas. You have to have Seichel. So I'm going to use the line of this Shtat Meshugana. The Haben Alichtike Gan Eden, wherever he is. Rebbe the Futterfass used to say the story. Meshuga b'seichel daf man haben. Everybody's a Meshugana, right? The only people I know that are normal are the people I don't know. And if somebody's really normal, then I don't want to know him. Because we connect to the Meshugana in each person. The Meshugana in me connects to the Meshugana in you. Right? Normal people, perfect people are usually dangerous people. It's the weakness of a person that makes him human, that makes him vulnerable, that makes him authentic, that makes him divine. Because God is perfect. For perfection, we don't need people, we have God. What do we need people for? We need people for imperfection. For perfection you have, without the world, it would have been much more perfection. For God we have perfection. People we need for imperfection.
To ask questions.
For growth. For Nuchem verstehst? We need people for imperfection, not for perfection. Perfection we have God. Let's put it differently. God needed people for imperfection. What did Hashem gain through the creation of the world? He was perfect. He wanted to experience growth. How can perfection have growth? How can perfection experience growth? Only through imperfection. So God took a part of himself and he implanted it into the world. And every soul is a chelik elokah, and there's growth. There's challenge and growth. So we all have meshugas. Aber seichel darf man haben. Seichel means a person has to be able to open his mind to the truths of life, to the truths of Elokus, to the truths of godliness, to the truths of Torah, to the truths of Pnimis HaTorah. Will everything be translated emotionally? Today, lav dafka. Lav dafka, everything I learn, I can right away experience emotionally and make it my father. But I have to begin with that process. Because what that does is, it allows my emotions to operate on in a much profounder place, in a much more mature space. It allows my emotions to grow, to be challenged, to expand. If not, I could have the emotions of a dog. I remain in a garbage can, eating bones and getting excited about it. Va'atkan. Yeah. All midas needs awareness. Every midah is based on awareness. There's no emotion without awareness. Every emotion comes from awareness. I emote to somebody based on a certain awareness. Right? Look at any emotion you have. There's something your mind is telling you about the person or about the thing, and therefore you're developing an emotion. When now you say, I have an emotion, you don't have an emotion. You have an awareness that's manifesting itself in an emotion. An emotion is the manifestation of a thought. The way the thought manifests in the heart, it's called an emotion. It's a thought that is manifesting itself. In Chassidus, thoughts and emotions are called Ila and Olul. Like a baby and a mother, like an apple tree from the seed. It's an Ila and an Olul. The machshava is the Ila, and the mid is the Olul. It's the manifestation of the machshava. All emotions begin with thoughts, with awareness. That's why when you change awareness, the emotions change. You reframe a story, your emotional response changes. We never respond emotionally to any particular story. We respond to our awareness of the story, to our thoughts of the story. Somebody tells you something and you're like, I can't deal with this, right? I could hear the same thing and it doesn't do anything for me, or the other way, right?
Change the filter. It's a new story.
It's a different perspective because he changed the filter through which his awareness is processed. So all midas is preceded by moichin. The value of moichin is that moichin allows the full expansiveness of transcendence, even though in midas it will always have to be translated in a personalized way. Okay.
So even the Malamdim now have space in them. I understand them that they're not perfect, and it's okay. They make mistakes.
Yes. For you to be able to go back to your teacher, and reframe the story, and understand where he may be coming from. You know, he is not. I don't know where he is and who he is, but
Ask him again the same question.
Yeah, you know, he's also limited. He's not perfect, even though he was your teacher. He's not perfect. He makes mistakes.
It doesn't make him right, but we're understanding in our life.
Doesn't make him right at all, but it means that he's human.
Bad person either.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. For 8 years, they're laughing from a kid for a question.
Wasn't the same Rebbe for 8 years?
No, but they give Moshe.
Why did he allow a class for a whole year to laugh from a kid? That was a terrible, terrible mistake that he made. A terrible, terrible educational mistake.
Each Rebbe gives it over to the next Rebbe.
But in his mind, he was disciplining him that he shouldn't ask stupid questions, and he accomplished it. He never asked a stupid question again. You know why? Because he never asked a question again. It took him 30 years to ask another question. If you don't ask questions, you don't ask stupid questions.
You have to come some therapy here.
He sat here for a few months without asking. Now he already asks. He still doesn't ask everything, but he asks. What?
How do we help these people out?
Yeah, smack you around.
I think
With
all
the clothing and all this, like, it's saying, how do we, like, help them out to, like, educate them that, like, perfection is never going to be a thing?
yeah.
Or, like, it's not our job, right? Like, help them out.
No, it is. I think every person, each of us who's a parent, each of us is an educator in our own way. I think we begin with ourselves. And I think it's our duty to try to help all educators see their children in a different light, not do these types of things.
Rabbi.
This class is brought to you by the yeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.